All right. So we started a couple minutes after 1 p.m. I'm here in Central European time, so we're going to kick off. We've got a lot to discuss today. We've got an amazing group, so thank you everyone for joining us. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining from today. Welcome to our webinar. Today, the webinar is Upping the Game, How Can Sport Better Respond to Forced Displacement? And I am delighted to welcome you here on behalf of the International Platform on Sport and Development. Many people know it as Sport and Dev, and the Sport and Refugees Coalition. Oh, please, if you can put your microphone on mute, that'd be great. My name is Marissa Schlenker, and I'm one of the co-hosts today. And I'll be joined with by Amjad Salim from the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. So he's joining me today. And for those of you who are not aware, the Sport for Refugees Coalition is co-convened by UNHCR, the Olympic Refuge Foundation, and the SCORT Foundation. And the coalition was formed in advance of the first Global Refugee Forum in 2019 and brings together over 80 organizations united by their pledges to increase access to sport at all levels for refugees and displaced persons around the world. And it is planned today that today's discussion around how sport can better respond. Oh, if everyone could put their mics on, please. One sec. All right. Hold on a sec. Oh, there we go. Awesome. That happens. We all know that this is the case, even so many times we've been on these webinars. So going back to that, so today's discussion is really actually, it's supposed to lead to something. So we want to think how sport can better respond to forced displacement, and for the discussion and some of the outcomes to feed into the development of the coalition's pledges for the 2023 Global Refugee Forum. So before we get started, you'll see here, these are just kind of our typical housekeeping. Of course, keep your microphone on mute. Turn on your camera, of course, if you want to, if the connection allows for it. Use the chat box. This is amazing. Everybody's already started to do that. Note that the recording or the webinar is being recorded, and it will also be shared at a later point. So that's really exciting. You can always come back to it if you have to hop off, no problem. And then also what's really important is in the chat box, respect each other. We do not tolerate any discrimination or hate speech, so be aware of what you're writing. Language is important. And also there should be, at the bottom, if anyone would like to use the live captioning for this webinar, you should be able to turn that on, and then you would be able to read a transcript. So this is something that is also available to make it more accessible. And so with taking care of the housekeeping, I think we're all on the same page. Then I'd like to set the scene a bit, and then I'll hand it over to my co-host to also set the scene. But why are we here today? So it's great. We've got an audience. I'm sure more people will be joining as we go along. But we are here today to debate and discuss how sport can better respond to forced displacement, particularly in situations of crisis. This webinar is part of what Sport and Dev has been working on. We've been collecting articles on the topic as part of our week of action, and we've actually received 23 from different parts of the world. So we will actually discuss those and share those later. So we're really excited that we've received different articles, and this is all part of the week of action. And so we are excited to have, you can see today we've got so many speakers, so I'm gonna stop talking pretty soon so that we can actually hear from people. But just so you understand the journey of today, so we will kick off with opening remarks from Pervin, you can see here, Ali from UNHCR, and then we will hear from Justin, a coach and teacher who's based in Western Uganda. And then we will have our panel discussion with Rodrigo, Katrin, and Nick Keller. And then we will also ask you all to contribute and be part of the discussion by sharing your different insights and questions on the Padlet. So we'll talk about that in a bit, and then that will enable us to have more of an interactive element. So now I will hand it over to my co-host here, Amjad, and he will paint more of the scene for today's webinar.
Great. Thank you so much, Marissa, and also let me add my welcome to everyone. It's lovely to see everyone here from a very cold and dark and gray Geneva. Hope everything's well where you are. It's great to see such great interest in this webinar, and I think you know, there's going to be an interesting discussion that's taking place. My name is Amjad Salim. I am the manager of the Volunteering, Youth and Education Development Unit at the International Federation for the Red Crescent Societies. For those of you who don't know us, we are the secretariat for the 192 Red Crescent societies across the world, with about 14 million volunteers. Half of them are under the age of 30. And while sports has been used and by many of our national societies, and we've worked in that, I think over the last few years, the IFRC in particular has been very interested in starting with an intentionality in programming around sports, and how does that equate to youth engagement and volunteering, and sort of bringing the role of education there. So over the last couple of years, we've been really working around football, foot-to-foot development, combining that with our youth leadership program, and then enabling young people to then come through using football and sports, and then go off and volunteer, doing micro projects at the local community. So there's a lot of work there that we've been looking at. And so for us, we are really keen to kind of engage in this space and sort of utilize the network that we provide. Before I introduce our guest speakers, I guess it would be great to kind of provide a background to this webinar. Currently, the UNHCR, the High Commission for Refugees, estimates that there are more than 100 million forcibly displaced people around the world, and of course this number has increased dramatically because of the war in Ukraine, with just under 8 million Ukrainians that have registered as refugees across Europe, and a further 6 million estimated to be internally displaced within the country. Whilst the attention has focused on refugees seeking to enter Europe, most of the world's refugees are actually hosted in the global south, with protracted crisis in and from countries such as Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Venezuela, South Sudan, and many more. At the end of 2021, the countries hosting the highest number of refugees were Turkey, Colombia, and Uganda. Sports organizations have played a key role in the response to Ukraine and other crises. They've provided knowledge, resources, opportunities. Sports projects have been used to support refugees and internally displaced people for decades, looking particularly at social inclusion, social cohesion, psychosocial support, healthy lifestyles, and so on. But I think what we're looking at, and that's why the purpose of this webinar is so important, is to really think about how we come together collectively as a whole ecosystem to coordinate better, to do more, to work across our silos, particularly for those of us in the humanitarian sector. We often are very siloed, and so we need to break those barriers. And so this webinar will also look at how, in the future, you know, what are the ideas that we can emphasize to work on? How can we work better together? What are some of the opportunities to learn from each other? So to set the scene, I'd like to introduce Perveen Ali, a senior policy advisor at UNHCR based here in Geneva, who currently heads the Global Compact on Refugees, the coordination team there. She has been working in the field of refugee and human rights protection since 1993 in various locations in the Middle East, Africa, and the United States, previously with NGOs and then later with UNHCR. She holds a PhD in law from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and is a national of the United States of America. Perveen, over to you for some opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here today, and I very much appreciate also the invitation to share with you some of our thinking and planning for the next Global Refugee Forum. And this is a very timely opportunity to share with you what the vision is a year from now, building on all of the good work that we all did together over the past 3 years. And to also hear your thoughts and views about how we can take forward some of the vision and ambition for this. I'm just checking to see if you're able to see my screen. You can see my screen? Yes. Perfect. Okay, great. So I thought what I would do is just, you know, thinking back to how we got here with the Global Refugee Forum, I thought it would be useful to start with looking at what the Global Compact on Refugees actually says about the Global Refugee Forum and its purpose, so that we can, when we're thinking about the kinds of progress that has been made over the past 3 years, as well as new pledges or commitments that different actors would like to bring to the table, we can think about how to situate them in the context of the structure of the forum and its purpose. So of course, we know that the objectives of the Global Compact are to ease pressures on host communities, enhance opportunities for self-reliance, and also support solutions, whether it's third country and resettlement or conditions for return. I think the sports engagement works across these objectives. We see a lot of sports engagement around building opportunities for self-reliance and inclusion. We also see sports engagement and the complementary pathways and providing opportunities for athletes and to study and travel and work in areas related to sports. So there's, I think, we have a lot of good evidence and good practice to build on as we look ahead to the next forum. The second part of the Global Compact also speaks a little bit to how we want to achieve these objectives. And we do this primarily through facilitating a comprehensive response. A comprehensive response is one that is owned by the national government, where they have a plan for how they're going to include, protect, and advance solutions for refugees. And it's one that's supported by what's called the multi-stakeholder and partnership approach. So there are more than 15 different stakeholder groups that are listed in the GCR as playing, including sports organizations, that play a key role in supporting these efforts to advance inclusion. Notably, of course, is our refugees, and meaningful refugee participation must be at the center of all of the preparations for the forum and in advancing the objectives of the compact. So in the compact, it envisions, it sets out a number of kind of arrangements or mechanisms for facilitating these objectives. And at the global level, the Global Refugee Forum is the main one. It's held every 4 years. Every 2 years in between the Global Refugee Forum, we have a high-level meeting, which is an opportunity to take stock of progress. But the purpose of the forum really is threefold. The first is that it is about stock taking, to see how far we've come and how well we've done. We will be issuing an indicator report on the Global Compact on Refugees next November, which will provide a lot of the evidence base for assessing progress towards the objectives. But we also stock take through reporting on the pledges and initiatives that have been implemented linked to the GCR. So we very much appreciate the many reports that we've received, particularly from sports actors and members of the coalition, around how they have implemented their commitments that they made at the first GRF. And we'll continue to encourage that kind of reporting moving ahead. The more reporting we do, the earlier we can do it, the more we can find ways to give visibility to the work that's been done, the progress that's been made at the forum itself. The second broad pillar of the Global Refugee Forum is, of course, around pledging. So we have a lot of pledges from the first Global Refugee Forum, almost 1,700. And we really want to make sure that those pledges get implemented. So that's a number one ambition. We have to make good on the pledges that were made, but also in the development of new pledges to ensure that they're very high quality. So we're not looking for another 1,700 pledges necessarily, but really looking for new high quality pledges that are pre-matched, meaning that they involve a number of different stakeholders to support initiatives around inclusion and solutions, that they're made jointly, and that they're also aligned with the recommendations that came out of the high-level officials meeting. The third kind of broad pillar is what we're calling learning, for lack of a better term, but it's really an opportunity to exchange on good practices, what's worked well, what can be upscaled or amplified or turned into a pledge for the next GRF, to reflect on challenges that we've faced over the past few years, whether it's, with escalating crises, the pandemic, funding challenges, and think about where the opportunities are for the future to really inform future action and initiatives. And all of this, as I said, is undergirded by a multi-stakeholder and partnership approach. So in thinking about what you would like to bring to the Global Refugee Forum next December, it would be useful to bring and make contributions in line with these three broad pillars: reporting on the pledges that have been made, making sure that we make progress in implementing the pledges we have, cultivating new ones together with partners to advance inclusion, and showcasing good practices, building on them, replicating them, and even perhaps expanding them through new pledges. So as I mentioned, we have almost 1,700 pledges in our dashboard now. We've received reports on about 1,000 of them, and the majority, we find that governments are a little bit more likely than other actors to report on the progress in their pledges. So we are very much encouraging all of our partners to report. And if you have questions on how to do this, please do let us know. It's a very simple process on our digital platform, through which it takes less than 5 minutes to provide an update on a pledge. But it helps us to maintain momentum, give visibility to where work is being done, and to keep up the attention on these issues. And you'll see here, this is just a breakdown of the pledges that were made in relation to sports by region and the thematic area. The majority of the pledges that came from sports actors were from actors in Europe, followed then by the Americas. We had a number of global pledges, and then the other regions. And the majority of the pledges from sports actors really focused on solutions. So I think this is quite an interesting analysis because it shows us where we've made good progress, but also where more could be done. I think in the context of engagement around the forum, it would be very good if we can bring many more national actors to the table, so that we have much better regional balance in the future. And to also think about how we can connect sport pledges to some of the key areas of focus, such as jobs and livelihoods, or protection capacity, or others. These are just the recommendations that came out of the high-level officials meeting. I won't go through them here, but I just wanted to flag that they are online. And if you're thinking about what kind of a pledge you would like to make, this is a good starting point. You can look at the options here. Each one of them is accompanied by some follow-up actions that can be turned into pledges. So we would invite you to consider whether you would see an entry point for your organization in cultivating pledges along any of these recommendations. And then just in terms of where we're going for the next year with this process, we're working now with all of the different initiatives and inviting the initiatives to develop their roadmaps for pledge mobilization. So what kinds of pledges do they want to work on in the lead up to the GRF? How do they want to get there? Who do they need to bring on board? What kinds of events do they want to organize to mobilize others? What needs to be put in place to be able to make the announcement in December? So we've invited all of our initiatives to start developing these roadmaps, and we very much hope the coalition will consider doing the same. This will be quite important moving ahead, because many of the roadmaps for pledges that are being developed at the global level by these broad coalitions of key stakeholders like sports actors or the private sector or others. And we want to make sure that we are at an early stage able to communicate the needs that have been identified by countries. So at the same time that we're asking our global stakeholders to identify what kinds of pledges they will be working on, we're also working at the country level with our country offices and with governments to identify what their kind of key asks are in their area, so that we can help link up these global initiatives to the needs that have been identified in specific areas. So if you're interested, if you're working on a pledge in support of a particular situation, that I think that's really good, and we're happy to support with that process. If you're working on a more global pledge and would like to think about how it could be applied or translated into action at the country level, we would also be happy to have a discussion and discuss where the opportunities might be. We provided an informal briefing on preparations for the GRF just a few days ago. We updated on pledges. Next week, we have our High Commissioner's Dialogue on Protection Challenges, which is really focused on development cooperation and engaging with development actors. So this one is really, development cooperation was an area that emerged as needing much more attention from our stock taking process last year, which was the reason why we opted to focus on it this year. And it's really looking at how we can engage development actors more systematically in refugee situations. And we hope that as a result of this dialogue next week, that we'll have some key initiatives that come out of that around which different stakeholders can join to advance some of the work on development cooperation. Next year, we'll have a series of quarterly informal briefings, which everyone is invited to, as always, to update on progress. Excuse me. We'll also have 3 formal preparatory meetings for the GRF. These are meetings that are held in person in Geneva, but they'll be live streamed in all 6 UN languages. And it's an opportunity for governments and other stakeholders to come together and share their vision and ambitions for the next forum, to provide inputs and help to co-shape the program for the GRF. So these meetings are really important consultative opportunities as we move ahead and refine our thinking around what we will achieve. And in November, we'll launch the indicator report for the Global Compact. And then in December, we will have the Global Refugee Forum itself. So on the 12th of December will be an advanced day for high-level linked events. And then from the 13th to the 15th, we'll have the plenary. The Global Refugee Forum will be again co-hosted by the governments of of Switzerland, by Switzerland and UNHCR, and co-convened with the governments of Colombia, France, Japan, Jordan, Niger, and Uganda. As the GCR calls for the GRF to be held at the ministerial level and co-convened with 1 or more countries. These countries were identified to ensure good regional balance and a good balance between large host countries and large donors. And these countries will be participating or have been invited to participate at the head of state or head of government level at the opening of the Global Refugee Forum. So we really are working closely with these countries to identify how they would like to engage and show leadership in the lead up to the forum as well. We'll have a handover event next week as part of the High Commissioner's dialogue from the 2019 group of co-conveners to the 2023 group, and they will share their reflections and ambitions for the next forum as well. I just wanted to speak a little bit to how sports organizations can engage in this process. As I mentioned, it's really important to report on progress that's been made so that we concretely understand what kind of impact is being made by all the pledges that have come out of the forum. The big question we get all the time, particularly from big refugee hosting countries, is what is the impact? How is the GCR made a difference for us and for the refugees that we're hosting? So the more that we can report on this and provide evidence of the impact, the better. So far, of the 123 pledges that were submitted by sports organizations, about 1/5 of them have been updated. 5 of them have been reported as fulfilled. So this is a good start, but we very much would encourage everyone to think about how they can increase reporting. We're happy to help with that. There's also, if different organizations would like to get involved in multi-stakeholder initiatives around specific themes, we have a form that's available online where you can indicate your interest, and we'll reach out to you to discuss how you would like to be involved. So for example, we have a strategy on resettlement and complementary pathways. We have an education alliance. Of course, there's the Sports Coalition itself, but there are a number of different multi-stakeholder initiatives that are working on pledges around themes. And if you're interested in advancing particular themes, please do let us know, and we're happy to engage you in those. We have also, in the spirit of ensuring that refugees are involved in the process from beginning to end, we have launched an open application for refugees who are experts in particular thematic areas or have lived experience who would like to be involved in developing pledges, participating in GRF preparations, and participating in the GRF itself to apply. So this is an open call, and we aim to identify the refugee delegation that will be supporting GRF preparations by the end of March. And we would very much welcome refugee athletes and sports professionals who might have some expertise to bring in pledge cultivation to also apply, so that we ensure that they're also engaged in pledge development. And finally, we will be, during these quarterly briefings that we will be having next year, we will be inviting the different multi-stakeholder initiatives to provide presentations on their roadmaps, what kinds of pledges they're working on, how other people can get involved, they can make calls to action. So if the coalition or any initiatives that any of the members are engaged in would be interested in making a short presentation for one of these briefings, please do let us know, and we're happy to make the space for that. So I will stop there, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a sense of where we're going as we move ahead. I think that it's an exciting time. We have a lot to work with. We have a lot of progress already to build on. So it's about maintaining the momentum, showcasing progress, giving us good stories about impact that we can give more visibility to and amplify through our own communications, and thinking about how you would like to bring your contributions to the GRF in December. We'd be very interested in hearing your ideas and thoughts on this as we move ahead. So I will stop there, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Praveen, for those insights, and also just sharing the background of that. It was very valuable just to kind of show the trajectory of this. In the interest of time, if people have questions, please put them in the chat, and Praveen can answer them whilst we go ahead. But we'd like to now hear, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Justin Quiserimana Rama Kuba. I apologize if I'm butchering the name. Justin is Congolese, has had refugee status in Uganda since 2017. He's a teacher by profession, currently serves as a Game Connect coach in Kiangwali refugee settlement with vast experience in delivering the sport for protection curriculums. As he aspires to create a significant change in his community, Justin is passionate about serving young people, helping them thrive by building their capacity and enhancing opportunities around them. So I'd love to hear from Justin, from your background. Thank you so much for joining and just share with us some of the work that you'll be doing and the impact that this working around sport has had on the community. Justin, over to you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. Quiserimana Ramakuba Justin. I'm here. I'm a Congolese. I'm now in Uganda since 2017. Due to the wars which happened in Congo and insecurity. I'm now a refugee registered under OPM here in Uganda in Changwa Refugee Settlement. Changwa Refugee Settlement is in a western part of Uganda. I joined here Game Connect because I was really passionate of sport. When I heard about Game Connect, I had to apply. Game Connect is under ASC Foundation, and Game Connect is working with other partners like Right to Play, Youth Sport Uganda, and the Uganda Olympic Committee. Game Connect is having a donor called Olympic Refuge Foundation. The game, as it is, when we started implementing Game Connect after assessing the youth, and really I have seen that Game Connect has really had an impact on my life. First of all, me myself, I came in Uganda when I was really traumatized. I was really traumatized after passing through a lot of torture in Congo. But when I was a coach here in Uganda, I found that this is a place of entertainment when I go to the sport. And while interacting with the youth, I came to release my stress, which I passed through in my country of origin, and I really coped up. While working with Game Connect, my father was kidnapped in Congo, and I really developed a mental health challenges. But with Game Connect, with the game, I came to realize, I came to narrate my story under the life skill called the self-awareness, under the game called the Liver of Life. I tried to narrate my story to my other coaches. I tried to narrate my story with the youth, and really it was, I came to release that stress and I came to cope up. Game Connect has a real impact of in the youth I was coaching. For example, we had a really youth who experienced the kidnapping, and they were really tortured, and they tried to be supported with other youth, other partners. I'm sorry, and really. They couldn't go away from their stress, and they couldn't go away from their anxiety, their depression. But through sport, after being enrolled under Game Connect, they came to realize that really it is very important to interact with other youth, and they came to release that stress. Even if in the beginning it was somehow hard, it was not easy to cope up, to be mingle, to be among other youth, but with sport, slowly, after learning different life skills, they came to cope up, and they came to understand that that is normal. And finally, we tried to make them leaders. Those ladies, we tried to make them leaders, and they can now feel free to narrate their story somehow, and to try to counsel other ladies who have faced the same challenges as they faced. So I really understand that game has really changed these years. Game is very important. There is also one scenario where a woman, a lady, lost the mother. When that date where they buried the mother reaches, she was really developing mental health challenges. But through sport, she came to understand, she came to cope up with that stress through a life skill called the coping with emotions and stress. And she really realized that it is normal as a human being. So sport has changed her. She is no longer having those midnight measures. She is no longer having, even if being referred to other organizations for other support like livelihood support, but really she was being really supported so much through sport. So I understand that sport has really changed me myself through that trauma I had, through that mental health challenges I had. It has also changed this use of the one I'm coaching, the one other coaches are coaching, because they are trying to open up, and that silent circle which was between them, that silent circle which was pushing them to not be mingle with others, it is now broken and they can share with others. So Game Connect or sport has really changed lives of youth and had an impact, a very big impact on me and the youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. What a powerful story, just to sharing the power of sports in changing people's lives, alleviating stress, providing that opportunity to interact with each other. Justin will be here with us throughout the whole session. So please, if you have any questions for him, he'll be there. We have a question and answer session afterwards. But without wasting any more time, I'd like to pass on back to Marissa now, because I think we have a panel discussion, and then we can really get into some of the aspects of it. So thank you very much for the earlier speakers. Marissa, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Justin, for sharing your story. And about your different experiences in sport, and please look at the chat. There's been a lot of comments there as well. So yeah, I will take the next step and now I'll introduce you to the different speakers who will be part of our panel discussion. So we've got Rodrigo Arzura, Chief Visionary Officer and co-founder of Football Mass Foundation. We've got Katrin Grafaren, Head of International Relations at the German Olympic Sports Confederation, and Nick Keller, founder and CEO of Beyond Sport. So welcome, everyone. I'm not going to give you the floor yet, but first we'll go to Rodrigo, who I believe is joining us from Chile. And I'll post a question for you, and then Rodrigo, feel free to respond. And I also understand that you've got slides to share with the audience today. So Rodrigo, Football Mass have done a lot of work in responding to forced displacement created by crises. For example, by working with Venezuelan refugees in Latin America. Could you elaborate and share with the audience a bit more about your work, and also why and how is sport such an effective tool in these situations? So if you can respond to those two questions, that'd be great. And I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning from here in Chile to everyone. I'm pleased to be here, very pleased to be here. I'll share screen so I can show some my presentation. Just let me know if you can see, please, if it's okay.
Yep, it's good, just in presentation. Super.
Okay. Football Mass is working to promote the well-being of children in different countries around the world, in 3 continents. And let me invite you to a journey of some results of our programs around the world. This is like a possible route of persons in situation of forced mobility. These 5, we can start first in a reception center, which are the first responders, where the children or families are around 1 day. And then you have the transition center, where or some shelters where people are around 15 days, let's say. It's different in the different continents, but this is roughly. And then you have the refugee and the internally displaced people centers, where they are from 1 to 3 months, let's say. In all of them, child protection is the focus. And then we have host communities and host schools. And there, the integration of migrant families is the key point. So I'll show you some results. This is in Tarapacá in Chile. Sorry. After around one month of the program, the 71% of children and teenagers declare that they maintain a good relationship and communication with the other people in the camp. 3 out of 5 children state that when another child on the trip has been in trouble, they have come to help. The 64% of the children declare that in the camp, they have people they can trust. How important is that? This is an example in Mexico. And some results after roughly 1.5 months of intervention. We've been working here with more than 13,000 children, and the 88% of the children say that share more with their peers thanks to Football Mass program. The 83% of children and teenagers feel happier since they are in Football Mass. In France, in a refugee center in Paris, here this is a pictographic methodology, and we asked the children about their life, about drawing their life and expressing a sentence about their life in their country and then in France. And you can see here the first two drawings, I stay home bored when I was in my country, and I like being here because I play and share with all the children. And the other one, leaving my house, I can die in my country, and now leaving my house, I can play in football mass. Very meaning drawings. And this is a house community with a lot of Venezuelan migrants and Peruvian people. It's in Peru. After 8 months of programs, the results, 75% of children and young people declared that at the end of the program, they had met friends of another nationality. 97% of children and young people declare that they feel confident sharing with children from another country. And the 80% of adults declare after the program that they feel part of the neighborhood. So what's the problem? I think the problem with sport is that it is articulated as an industry only for competition. And let me take soccer as an example. A great magnet of attraction, soccer, we've seen the World Cup now, no? A whole exciting industry is built around the competitive soccer. And here we have professional soccer, international and national football federations, sponsors, big sponsors, superstars, players, very attractive leagues, and others less attractive, but still part of the industry. And then we have amateur soccer and school soccer, all competitive. They all interrelate in some fairly coordinated way and attract the attention of millions of people around the world. If we look at the school that has physical education class, for example, the children who participate in a competition are a minority. The rest just attend their classes, but don't belong to an attractive ecosystem that they wish to be part of. The question is, how can we interrelate these two worlds and make them a much bigger and healthier ecosystem? Professional football has the power to motivate millions of people, but it is also capable of promoting sports citizenship, and we have experienced that in Chile in two campaigns, one to promote the national anthems and another one to generate a ritual of closing at the end of the matches. And let me show you this last example. This is in Madare and Kibera, two big slums of Nairobi. We worked in both slums in 4 schools, in 2 fields, community fields. The fields were settled in the community, so the children came after the school, out of the schools, and go to have their class, their physical education class or sport for development class at the field. We worked with more than 700 children, and 22 young leaders were graduated, 28 community coordination team members were helping, 45 teachers were trained, 3 community leagues were played, and this is key, very key, so important for the motivation of children. And then some results: 91% of children get along better with their peers, 90% of the children concentrate more at school, and 88% of the children feel safer when are at the field. So what can we do? How can we construct a bigger ecosystem? I think that competitive sport must go from a source of motivation to a source of inspiration. And together with that, we should construct and articulate an ecosystem that promotes integration and well-being for children and teenagers at schools and in the communities. If we do that, I'm sure that sport and football can transform our reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Wow, you presented a lot from results of your programs, the different methodologies, how you found out came to those results, and then ideas and activations that you're doing for bringing the ecosystem closer together. So I will actually move on now to Katrin, but we will come back to you, Rodrigo, for another question after both Katrin and Nick have spoken. So we'll go to Katrin. The German Olympic Sports Confederation has been active in supporting displacement caused by crises such as the conflicts in Ukraine and Syria. And if you could elaborate on the work that you all have been doing, and also comment on what you would say the main role of sports federations in such situations are. So if you could touch on those two questions, that'd be great to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Marissa, and Rodrigo. Congrats on your great work. What we all just saw, quite impressive, really. Yeah, we at the German NOC, which is German Olympic Sports Confederation, and the acronym is DOSB, just to mention it once. We are following two different approaches. One, of course, we look at what we can do in Germany, but also we try to support abroad. I start in Germany. There we cooperate for more than 3 decades already with the Federal Office for Refugees and Migration in a program which is called Integration Through Sport. So it's focusing on social cohesion between refugees and the people of the host communities here in Germany. It offers free access for the migrants, refugees to enter the local sports clubs so that they can play sports, they can do physical activity in a safe place. But of course, it does not end in just offering, the possibility to come and join. It goes along with the vast qualification program, because it's important also to have the coaches prepared for this target group. So so this is a whole education course going along, so that they learn how to deal with the diverse groups. They get a better understanding on specific needs of migrants and refugees, and also, of course, of their often very, very difficult psychological and social situation. And so they get acquainted on various methods, how to offer sports programs in a way that is embracing and uniting everybody. This program started 30 years ago already, as mentioned, but with the refugee crisis in 2015, it rose in importance. So now it's annually more than 12 million euros spent on it, and more than 1,300 clubs benefiting from it here in Germany. Then when we look what we do abroad, there we support our partners in the Olympic movement. From 2016 to 19, we worked with the Turkish Olympic Committee at the Turkish-Syrian border. The program was funded by the German Development Corporation, and there we were offering a sports program for refugee youth and for the youth of the host communities, reaching altogether more than 18,000 children. Right now, and since 2020, we work together with the Greek Olympic Committee and other local partners in Athens and in the coastal areas, mainly to offer sports programs for Syrian refugees arriving in the coastal area. In the end, of course, the goal is, no matter where, be it in Germany or be it abroad, to offer a safe place for them to play sports and to contribute to social cohesion through sport. And Mariska, your second question was on the main role of sports federation in such a situation. I think, of course, it's difficult to generalize because you have to see, what kind of a sports federation are you, big or small, more focused on grassroots sport or on elite sport? At DSB, of course, we focus both. So we have grassroots programs, as you just have heard, but of course, we're also looking at elite sport, and there just some brief examples looking at the current situation where we have more than 1 million Ukrainian people registered in Germany, and also some of their really top athletes coming into our sporting system. So we have opened up the Olympic training centers for them, and we have implemented an emergency fund to support those federations and training centers who host these top athletes so that they can pursue their sporting career, and to help finance also the participation for them in international competition and training camps and so on. And then, of course, since we are here also on behalf of the Olympic Refuge Foundation, we collaborate from the very beginning with the ORF, and yeah, we are proud to be the NOC having the biggest number of refugee Olympic athletes in the program of the International Olympic Committee. In Tokyo, 6 of our athletes made it to the games, to the Olympic refugee team. And yeah, already now we are about to reach 10 scholars in the program. And of course, we hope we can contribute to make their dream come true and participate in the Olympic Summer Games in Paris 2024. So that was my brief overview. Of course, there's much more to say and tell, but yeah, just to give some insight on what we've been doing at the German NOC. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was really interesting, from Rodrigo with programs to Katrin now in the Confederation, and what you're doing locally in Germany and then abroad, the different collaborations and partnerships you have. And then you mentioned the different funds and resources, and you mentioned the emergency fund. And now actually we're going to go to Nick Keller. And Beyond Sport has launched the Sport Together Fund. And from my understanding, the fund aims to respond and support communities and organizations displaced by conflict. So the audience would like to also hear can you describe this fund in more detail, and also comment on whether this type of response, so the mobilization of resources, could potentially be a benchmark for responding to other crises. So I'll hand the floor over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Marissa, Rodrigo, Katrina, amazing work you're doing as well. So thank you for having us here, and hello to everybody across the world. Beyond Sport has been around for a fair old time now, 13 years, looking where sport can drive change, intentionally be used to drive change. We've looked at the refugee space some time ago in 2015, but the key stakeholders weren't particularly aligned. And I think what's been completely transformative has obviously been UNHCR's work over the last 2-3 years that has provided some real leadership and opportunity. And so when we saw, I think, well, if we look at the basics of it all, that sport's role in the refugee setting has a clarity and simplicity to it that I think anyone involved in our industry can really understand and really get that when someone has lost community, that sport has this unique asset of providing an anchor that is hugely important. And with that simplicity and the speed and the scale and the proximity of what was happening in Ukraine, we felt it was the right opportunity to readdress that we tried a few years earlier and launched a more united approach from the sport ecosystem to see how it can work together. Because although teams and leagues and rights holders engaged in this space so much. There was many key stakeholders that are quite important that hadn't really engaged, and those cut across some of the really important parts of the industry that people forget about sometimes, and that's the agencies that are drawing together our community, our commercial community, which is the brands, teams, leagues, rights holders. So also at the same time, we're seeing that sport's role in social impact is becoming a bit more mainstream, and so a bit more acceptable to have bring it move from the fringes to become a mainstream conversation. Really only the last few years. So we thought, how can we create an ecosystem approach? And working with a partner organization, the Sport Industry Group within the UK, we decided to launch the Sport Together Fund. And we did this so that stakeholders in sport can unite, uplift, and help create safe spaces for people and communities seeking refuge, which was the key basis of doing it. The first thing we've done over the last few months is look to co-design the fund. So although we've done some great, received some great grants across the industry and build a cohort of preliminary founder organizations, we put in place an expert advisory group, and I can see some of those people from that advisory group on this webinar already. So that's great. I know Gerald's on, and a few other people that have been helping us, Lucy Mills, who's been helping pulling together over the last 6 months. And the fund is going to directly support, through cash grants and capacity building, organizations using sport to tangibly improve the lives of people experiencing displacement. And this isn't just, I'd say it's been inspired by Ukraine, but this is a organization that is going to look across the world at all refugee settings, and also potentially, when other emergencies do occur, we'll be there as well to address those situations. So that's where we've kind of got to at the moment, and we've done some, like I say, we're just at the moment doing a call for grants at the moment out to the community, and we've got a bit of a focus at the moment over 3 key areas that we're looking at, which is where sport is taking a leadership role, education and training for refugees and displaced people, and asylum seekers aged 16 and over, people that are tailoring training to help refugees into work or through their club or organization. It's looking at the grassroots, funding for a broad range of sports activity, providing physical, social and emotional outcomes for refugees, and then learning that can happening and sharing best practice in the space as well. So those are the kind of key areas we're going to be working. And for me, the fundamental part is how can we bring together the ecosystem, this huge network that sport has. If you look at the network that sport has got, from the IFs through to the national governing bodies through to the leagues, it kind of creates a bit of a filter, siphon, that means that we exist in so many communities across the world, all the different sports and sports teams and sports clubs that exist at the smallest micro level. They all got a role to play when it comes to the refugee situation. This isn't just for the Bundesliga. This isn't just for Arsenal Football Club. This is for every single community and every single sports club to play its role. And I think that's a huge opportunity that sport has. And I think our job and the people that are on this call that buy into this, because they won't be on this call if they're not, it's about educating the entire ecosystem to understand that by pulling together, even in those small communities, you can have a direct impact on individuals' lives. And I don't think that sport quite recognizes, I think it sees itself in quite siloed at times. But, there's no greater network that exists in the world. I mean, maybe distribution of Coca-Cola and Amazon maybe the armed forces, if you pull them all together. But in reality, sport has this just amazing, which, you know, the German Olympic Committee are part of, and that we've got to find a way of unleashing that opportunity, because it really is just this sleeping giant that exists for global change. And I do think we're reaching that opportunity where we're recognizing that most of the things that need to happen in the world require behavioral change. And we as a industry have this greatest reach to billions of people that really look up to these organizations that can help deliver the change. So I see this as a huge opportunity to draw sport together, and we very much see this as a long-term project. But we've had a fantastic response, and I'm focusing very hard at the moment. We're focusing very hard on agencies, such as the marketing agencies that act as the linchpin between teams, leagues, and brands, to be the initial investors at the moment.
Thank you, Nick. And actually, what you just said really leads into kind of one of the questions I have for all panelists. So this sport network, sport ecosystem, we've heard from different types of stakeholders in this sport network. How can we actually strengthen this network, and how can we collaborate better? And maybe Rodrigo or Katrin, if you want to go first, either one of you, what are some, maybe how we can strengthen this network, or if you want to think about what are some examples of collaborative efforts that you've seen where different stakeholders are working together to strengthen this network to respond to the crisis, the displacement crisis. So I'll go with Rodrigo first. Do you have any examples or how you would think to strengthen this network as Nick just was speaking about?
Thank you for your fantastic work. I think we all have a role to play here, but the first thing is to see this as a big ecosystem. That's the key, because when you look at it as an ecosystem, then you can structure the whole layers, let's say, and every role for each organization. I think the sport for development organizations like us have a role to play, sharing their methodologies and implementing their methodologies and training coaches where the coaches are, because we have that's why I show the example of the schools. We have the coaches there. They have been paid, and they are there to play, and we have to tell them and train them how to integrate, how to use sport to integrate, to work in a healthier coexistence in schools. We have to tell them how to connect the schools to the community. We can do that. Imagine 500 million of refugees, refugees from Ukraine around Europe. How can we do that? How can we reach every children at schools? So I think the schools have a role to play. The grassroots organizations have a role to play. We, as sport for development organizations, need to systematize our work and train and use some technologies to scale our program. And then every stakeholder has a role to play in this big ecosystem. And the professional football, professional sport must inspire. They are the example. Every children is looking at them. So they have a role to play here, a very important role to play.
Can I add to that, Rodrigo, to what Rodrigo, sorry, sorry to interrupt, Katrina, if you were on a train of thought. I think actually, and I just want to add to what Rodrigo said at the end there, we've got to cut through some of the bullshit of politics at the moment. That I think some of these very high level brands that exist in sport, the teams and leagues, are holding back a little bit of fully committing to this space. And certainly I'm feeling that where I come from, and I certainly know it's the case in some of the other markets as well. And we've got to find a way where you're completely right, Rodrigo, it's about inspiring, but it's all about the teams and the leagues that have the profile finding courage to speak with an open voice over what it means to care about the other. I think it's essential, that's an essential step, so that we can really unleash the network and the communities that they have such a fundamental communications network into every community that it staggers me that they can't cut through now, and they can't find the courage and bravery to realize that sport has this opportunity. They're completely fundamental to it, yet they're still a little caught by the politics of it all and what their fans are going to think. And I think they need to show some courage at the end of the day.
All right, Katrin, do you want to give a comment on the same question?
Yeah,
or
maybe one thought, because I think, I mean, we all agree in here that it only works in cooperation. It's a multilateral cooperation to tackle this huge refugee challenge. But what is even more important than that, it's an interdisciplinary cooperation, because the dimensions are so huge. I mean, if we remain within sports, I think our impact will be limited. And as Nick just said, of course, I mean, we have the big clubs, brands, you know, they're raising awareness is a great opportunity. And I agree. I think there's more room to fill. But then also, I mean, it needs the political network, it needs financial support, it also needs psychological expertise in this specific field. So in the end, I think it's important to recognize what is my own strength as an organization, but also then where are my limitations, and then trying to look for appropriate partners and really to get the different fields needed covered, each by an expert, and not think, you know.
But Katrina, I find that really, I think you've got a really valid point about everyone finding what they're good at and what they're expert at and driving forward. And certainly we see with the IOC their single-minded focus on talent, which I understand it, but there is a greater need that's far wider, that I believe that the Olympic movement and indeed FIFA have a greater responsibility for, certainly in this situation. And I sometimes question whether the single-minded focus on athletes and supporting athletes of a certain level is the right strategy for an organizations that really represent sport globally. And they draw in the big brands and they get so much bandwidth and so much intelligence, so much attention, that they have a greater role to play. And I respect what they do for athletes, but the money is paltry compared to you know, what it really should and could be.
Yeah, if I may just respond to that, I think actually it is not that single-minded. Of course, focus is on athletes, because Olympic Games there is the biggest event. This is the main task. But if you look at Olympic agenda 2020 +5, and if you look at Olympism 365, the new strategy which has just been launched, I think there is the broader view around, and I think the Olympic movement there is on the right track.
Yeah, just been launched is the key point, though, Katrine.
True. Yes.
Yeah.
As I said, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so in the interest of time, we've got 15 minutes. We've got our audience still here. What we have done, and I think my colleagues from Sport and Dev will share soon in the chat, or maybe they already have. We've got two Padlets, the French and English, and we want to make this interactive. So we'd ask for the audience to respond. So choosing either going into the English or the French Padlet, and respond to the question: what is the one fix that actors using sport to respond to crisis could or should implement to maximize the impact of their work? So we've got this here. Thanks, Paul, for sharing. We've actually, some of the ones we've already seen are monitoring and evaluation, which we also heard Rodrigo speak about. We've heard about cross-sector partnerships and so on, but we would love if you can share more. So anyone here, we've got 76 participants, and then we can fill this up, and this will also contribute to the follow-up after the webinar. So these two Padlets are open. They will be open after the webinar as well, and feel free to comment there. And I'd like to, thank you, the panelists, for sharing, and we went into different directions, but that's great. That's amazing. We had a really engaging discussion there. I'm gonna now hand it over to my co-host, Amjad. We've seen different questions coming in through the chat. So maybe you want to also share some of the different questions that we've had as well for the previous speakers.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Marissa, and thank you, everyone, for that really interesting conversation. If you have questions for the panelists, please do put them in the chat. But we had a question early on for Justin, which was around sharing a story of one of the young people that you work with, how sport has changed their life. So it'd be great if you have a story that you can share.
Yes, we have very many stories we can share, but I'm going to give examples of two stories. The first one was a lady who experienced defilement. This lady was assisted by other organizations, but that distress, that depression and anxiety remained in her, and she was really ashamed to be among other youth, to be among others in the community. She couldn't go to the Boa Hall, she couldn't go to the church. When she was enrolled under Game Connect, in the beginning it was very, very hard for her to be among others. So through different talks, through different life skills, she began to learn slowly. She came to cope up with that stress. She came to cope up with that anxiety, and she came to understand that is a situation which happened, and she came to take it easy. And now she's very happy with others. She's sharing stories with others. I tried even to make her a peer leader, to be able to be open to others. And now she can share that story with others to make that other ladies who are experiencing such challenges. She can share with those ones, and she feels happy. She's now okay. She can go to the Boa Hall. She has broken that silent circle which was in her. Another story was for a lady who lost her mother here in the settlement, and they buried her mother, and she was the only one she had here in the settlement. But when always that date where they buried her mother came, she was developing the mental health challenges. Then when they assessed her under Game Connect, she was really, really not even feeling to join others, to join people, because she was really having so much stress. So she tried to cope up slowly, because that is the state where you need to go slowly with different life skills, through different talks, through different counseling. She came to cope up, and she's now a leader, as I said earlier. We try to make those people who had those challenges leaders, to make them able to explain to others, to make them able to cope up with the situation. And this lady is now happy that death, she is no longer remaining with that death, and she's now happy. That is also one of the stories. We have another one who experienced rape. You understand that rape is it is an act which traumatized her, and she got pregnant through that action. During that situation, she was really, really depressed. I understand that sport has really changed her after a time, after learning different life skills, after meeting other youth. She came to cope up, and she's now very, very happy. Even if having a child without a father, having a child, she got an unwanted pregnancy. But we try to cope. She tried to cope up through different life skills, and she's now very, very happy. So I understand that sport has really changed lives of the youth in this settlement.
Thank you so much, Justin, for those very powerful stories, and just sort of showing the real lived experience that brings. We have a couple of questions that I'm going to group together so that in the interest of time. So there was one question for Rodrigo around your presentation, where just a point of clarity, were you proposing a competitive sport for refugees? That was a question that was there. So if you can just clarify that. And then for Nick, one was around maybe sharing a link to your website and funding opportunities, but more generally, it was a comment, but I think it's a question. There's a question in there, which is basically, is there a barrier in terms of getting the big brands at the table? I mean, is it because then they're not being educated, or they are reluctant to be educated? I mean, what's the barrier? I guess is a question that is being asked to actually have this conversation. So Rodrigo, first over to you, and then Nick.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I'll put an example. For example, let's see Poland. I said before 500 million, and I want you to say 500,000 of children, and the example was particularly for Poland. Let's say, and I'm not saying that we would need to do like a competitive league for refugees. What I'm saying is that we have the competitive sports at one side, and they work as an industry, coordinated. But then we have children assisting to their physical education class. And in that class, you have refugees, and you have local people or local children as well. So what I'm saying is that we have to use that sport place, that sport opportunity, to make an ecosystem and to work at the schools, not just with an activity to move or the body, let's say, or to work for the physical well-being. We need to do. We use that class to work for the healthy coexistence of the schools, and we need to connect the schools, and we need to make some leagues, but not competitive leagues. We need to do leagues promoting the well-being, promoting the integration for migrants, and the leagues are very important because they connect what you're doing in the class I'll tell you an example. In football match, we show a green card for all positive actions during the class. We have a curriculum, and we work in that curriculum through the classes with activities. But then, when the children have a point, let's say a green card, that's a point for going to the league. So everything is connected. You have to work this as a system, as an ecosystem. It's not just an activity, the sport for development. It's an ecosystem. So we have to connect that. We have to make a possible environmental sport ecosystem for the children to be part of. It's not a competition. It's not a competitive sport. They can compete with a different spirit, but they need to interact. And we have to connect. And I think schools are very key to make this scalable.
Great, thank you, Rodrigo. I think, Nick, that's something as well that you've been talking about in terms of that connection. Love to kind of hear your thoughts on how do we bring those brands onto the table, or what's the reluctance for them to come to the table?
Thanks, Amjad. So just, I think one of the things to say, I'm going to say this very briefly, the refugee space is deeply complex and complicated. And it's a high risk environment, and we are much better off letting the stakeholders that are on this phone call deal with everything. And for the brands and the fuel and the energy that possibly come behind it. You know, if you look at what brands can do in this space, it's fundraising, it's in-kind support, it's potentially employability, but more importantly, it's a platform for education that sport can deliver very comfortably, and also keeping these catastrophic events in front of mind of people when the news cycle moves on. It's really important that sport does that. And so if you look at those different areas, the benefits for brands, the commercial benefits of brands are a little harder to engage with. And if you look at what brands are looking for out of sport, it is profile, it is their own employee engagement, consumer engagement, fan engagement. It's slightly harder to cut through some of this conversation for these big commercial brands. And so what I think holds them back slightly is, number one, where's my commercial benefit going to be coming from? How does this fit in even a shared value model, which is where we're looking for social and business impact at the same time? Not just business impact on the over, but where can we equate social and business impact at the same time? And so that piece is around how do we activate, and how, you know, if we are going to invest this money or we are going to be philanthropic, most organizations want to see something back. And I think they're having trouble getting the cut through and the cut through for some of their objectives there and then. So I think that's what's holding back. There's a complexity to the space they're going into, and the ways they can engage with it can be complicated. And I think, so the real excitement is the work that Katrine does and the work that Rodrigo does. Let's let the brands use the experts. Let the brands use the network. Let them work together into the ecosystem. And this is why the Sport Together Fund has been pulled together, because it's a big piece of education and opportunity coming together. But everything's in place at the moment for this to happen. And I think we need to just make it a little easier for the brands to understand that we can provide the same benefits as we've normally have done in the past. And I mention again that I think also there's a bit of politics that some of the brands find difficult to cut through on as well. And they feel in certain countries that they're taking a stance, whereas of course this subject matter should not be about taking a stance. It's obvious, isn't it?
And I think that, you know, there have been certain brands that have taken a stance on certain social justice issues in the past, right? Around sports. So I think you're right. There's a complexity which we probably haven't really unpacked, and I think that's one thing that has come out from today is this concept of changing the narrative. What does that narrative look like, and how do we change that narrative around
Yeah.
around this issue?
And just to clarify, because someone's just come up on the chat group, that the UEFA funded youth empowerment program, of course, when I'm talking about brands at the moment, I'm talking about sponsors, more like, and some of the corporations. I think there's rights holders that have done some great work and some teams that have done some great work, because at the heart of it all, and it's Rodrigo's second slide, I think, had this center, the word center appeared like 3 times. Sport is a center. You know, these sports organizations, the stadium, they're centers, they're a linchpin, and they are a new community to hang on to. And so this is why we're so fundamental in this discussion.
Great. Thank you. We are running out of time, so there's so much to unpack from what has been said today. So I don't want to start, but I think a couple of things that have come up, which is around this concept of the ecosystem, recognizing that we are all connected, and so there's a part for all of us to play in this, and then there's a role for all of us to play in this. The concept of, I think, changing the narrative or redesigning what the narrative looks like, co-designing what the narrative looks like. I think stories are still very powerful. We need to have those stories. The stories from the local groups, I think, needs to come up more. And then I think the concept of sport not just being something that we see as a commercial entity, but there's a legacy element to it. And so something around where these mega sporting events also come up. What does this look like in terms of the legacy, and how do we start to work on that? So I think these are some of the ideas that pop up for me. I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions there. I'm going to hand over back to Marissa for the final bits. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining. To Amjad, it was great to co-moderate with you. And also to our speakers, we've got Katrin, Nick, Justin, Rodrigo, and also Pervin, who opened up the whole discussion today. There's also lots of people behind the scenes, as we all know. So we want to also support and thank everyone who helped to organize this webinar at the Sport for Refugees Coalition, including the Olympic Refuge Foundation, SCORT, and UNHCR. So thank you. Calls to action. So we would really encourage everyone to take a look at the links to the Padlet and to also make sure that your voice is also heard there. We are going to collect all the different suggestions that are made through the Padlet, the French and English, and we will collate those and organize them and come up with an outcome from that. As well, I'd like to also point out so this today webinar was part of the action, but we've also had a lot of articles that were submitted. So of course, each article has different authors. And so we really appreciate this. This is important. We'd also encourage you all here, if you want to learn more about some of the different topics, you can see here, and we will also, you can find these on Sport and Dev. These are all the different articles and contributors and countries. So we know that this topic of forced displacement in sport is global. So you can take a look and look at the different situations that the authors are writing about. And yeah, that's about it. We really just appreciate everyone for joining. We know everyone's got busy lives, so thanks for joining today. We will also do a follow-up and the recording will be shared. So appreciate everyone and thank you.